I'm going to share a screen that's going to be a whiteboard screen, and I'm going to try my hardest to write on the screen if I can. And it's not that easy to write. I'm going to try to use the skinny one. And what I wanted to show you here are the vowels. And you're used to practicing the vowels as our vowel aerobics, what we call them. And so I'm going to make a bunch of X's first. And not that there's any Hebrew letter that's an X, but X is a good way of showing you a kind of place marker. So I'm just going to make them first because it's going to be a pinch easier for me. Sometimes I used to use boxes for some. It's hard for me to do these on my word processor because the word processor won't necessarily put vowels where I need them to. Can you see all the way down to the bottom? Can everybody see all that? All right, so the X's represent what the shape of the letter would be, and it's not necessarily showing you, it's not a letter at all. And I'm going to pick let's see, let's do different colors that might be different. And I don't know if I could do this with fat vowels. Let's see if I can. Nope, I cannot. Let's get rid of that one. I'm going to go back to skinny. All right, so the next thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to do this in a specific order. I'm going to show you this is a line under a letter. And if we were doing vowel aerobics, we would say this is ah. I'm going to tell you that its name is patach. You do not have to remember the names of letters, but some people may want to hear the names of letters. It's patach. It sounds like ah. It has whoa, this is supposed to be a straight line. It has a corresponding vowel. Is that okay? Can you see that that's a vowel, the straight line vowel? No, that made it worse. I'm going to try to show it to you one more time like this. This should be going straight across. Try to do this with a mouse. All right, so this one is ah like this. So we have an ah and an ah. And what I'm going to show you now is that these I'm going to put in a category that I'm going to mark as SV, which means short vowels. And these I'm going to put into a category that is LV, which means long vowels. Now in English, there's a difference between a long vowel and a short vowel, and the longs and the shorts do not sound alike at all. But in Hebrew, the long vowels and the short vowels in modern pronunciation will sound alike. So you have the short vowel ah and the long vowel ah, and you can't tell by hearing them necessarily if it's a long vowel or short vowel. There may be no difference in pronunciation for all practical purposes, especially for those of us who start off as English speakers. And I say that because sometimes if your native language is something else, you may pronounce them differently, but most of the time as an English speaker, you wouldn't even notice if they did. And all it would mean would be that they might possibly hold it a teeny bit longer when they're saying ah than saying ah, but other than that, there'd be no difference in the pronunciation. And maybe I should make the long vowels like a different color or something. I don't know. I like to give you some way of showing the distinction. So what I do is this, watch this. I can do this. I can make my eraser erase this stuff, and I'll make this, I'll make it like this. It's trying still to make a straight line. Oh, that's still terrible. Ah and ah. And this is my long vowels. My long vowels are going to be brownish. Then I'm going to go back to my blue, and I'm going to say the next short vowel I'm going to do is these three dots, and it sounds like this, eh. And the long vowel version is going to be eh. So this is an eh on the right, and this is an eh on the left. They're both eh. If you need to remember if it's long or short. So what's going to happen is the difference between the long vowel and the short vowel is the way they act in a word. And it's going to become familiar. It's going to be something that you already will recognize, because in English, they're going to act in a very similar way. It's just that you don't see it as easily in Hebrew to begin with as you do in English. And you'll see what I mean by all of this in a second. But right now, I'm just going to make the chart for you. So you've got the short vowel ah and the long vowel ah, and the short vowel eh and the long vowel eh. E is the next one. The short vowel E is one dot, squeak your nose, E. And the long vowel E is I take my one dot, but I also add a yud to it. and that's my long vowel E. So I've started to tell you this short vowel is a patach, and this is a kamatz, and this is a segol, and this is a tzera, and this is a chirik, and this is called a chirik maleh. And then the next one is going to be a E. Next one is O. I'm doing this so if you were ever going to learn the vowels in any language, they do A, E, I, O, U. That's the order that you do it in, A, E, I, O, U. So I'm doing A, E, and the next one is O. And O in Hebrew, the short vowel version is called a kamatz katan. And as you know, on my word processor, it has a very long bottom to it. Sometimes you may see it where it has a separated bottom. Sometimes you may see it, sorry, it's still a straight line, sorry about that, where it's kind of a dot underneath it, but that's straight line here, sorry about that. So sometimes it may look differently, and sometimes it's going to look exactly the same, ooh, that was straighter, as the kamatz, the regular long vowel kamatz. And you're going to know that it's a short vowel because it's going to be so obvious to you by the time I finish this lesson. I hope I get through the whole lesson. And so then that's the O vowel. And the O vowel, as you know, the long, whoop, that's not brown. Stop that. This is supposed to be brown. So the long vowel O is, so that was a kamatz katan. And the long vowel O is what's called a cholam. And sometimes it is, and I have to do one of these again. I have to do red. And I have to make another X over here because sometimes the long vowel O can be just the one dot, and that's still, they sometimes call this a cholam chaser. Remember, this was a chirik maleh, the E, that means a full chirik. And this one is a cholam chaser, which means a lacking cholam, because you're missing the consonant that helps to, it's called a consonant vowel that helps to make it long or short. So these two are both O and long vowel O's, they're both cholam, and this is a kamatz katan. And then the next one, E, I, O, U. So the U vowel, short vowel, is like this. It's called a kubutz, which means a gathering together. And the long vowel is the U, like this. Now, I used to feel like there was a sense of whether it was longer or shorter. And some of it is because of the way I was taught these vowels when I was first taught them. So here we have patach, which looks shorter. It's got one less piece to it. I mean, let's just physically think of it that way. This one, the segol to the tzera, now I have to use the opposite kind of logic here because the segol has 3 parts to it and the tzera has 2. So if I'm using the same kind of logic, I'm in trouble here. But when I was young and I was learning these vowels, I was taught that this one was always an eh, and this one was always an a. And if I did it that way, then the A felt longer than the eh did. And in fact, I'm going to show you this because you already know this one. I'm going to put another X here. And you know that we have this diphthong version, which means I combine 2, have the eh and the yud. Wow, it's supposed to be yud. It's not supposed to be that long. I'm going to make a little yud. So this one is an eh. Sorry, you have to be able to see what I'm pointing to. This is an eh. In modern Israeli pronunciation, this is an eh, and this is an a, and they belong here together. But this is a tzera, this is a segol. These are still all long vowels. This is still a segol, it's still a short vowel. You're just gonna have to remember that this one eh is a long vowel, and this one eh is a short vowel. The chirik is easier to figure out. Chirik is just one dot. The chirik maleh, I have added to the chirik, I've added a yud, so it's longer, it's kind of bigger. The similar kind of feeling with the cholam, that the cholam O is bigger, it's got more part, it's got a big part to it, it's a long vowel. And the kamatz katan is called a small kamatz because it is small. So that's the O, the short vowel version. And the similar kind of a thing with the U, where I have just dots underneath as opposed to a whole consonant plus a dot. That may or may not be very official sounding to anybody about how I've figured out how they're longer or shorter, but you will start seeing the which comes first, the chicken or the egg thing. You'll get to start seeing that You'll recognize that it's a short vowel because it's going to be, you'll know that it has to act this way because it's a short vowel, or you will see that it's a short vowel. You'll know either because of what it looks like, or you'll know that it is a short vowel, and you'll see that what it does is a short vowel thing. So one of the things you're going to have to figure out is that these are short vowels and these are long vowels, and remember them. And I'm going to leave them on the screen for a second as I show you my next thing. We have one other thing that is a vowel marker, and I'm going to make that black over here. I'm going to do more. Actually, I need some red to show you two more X's. So I have two more X's here. And these are not vowels. I'm going to put a line between these things because these are going to be vowel markers. These are your vowels, and these are vowel markers. And I'm going to make these another color. And the thing that comes over here are the Schwa. And there's two kinds of Schwa. There's actually three, but you're not old enough for the third one. No, I'm just kidding. There's two kinds of Schwa. There is what I like to call a moving Schwa. Oop, I'm not the only one who calls it a moving Schwa. It is also called a mobile Schwa. It is also called a Schwa na. Can you hear me say Schwa na? As opposed to what I like to call a resting Schwa. You're never going to see an arrow on them in the real life. This is just, it's like there's the joke, since we're in Passover right now, there's the joke about how can you tell when it's a gefilte fish in the sea, because it's the one with the carrot on its back. So this is kind of like that gefilte fish. Now it's got arrows next to it, but that's not what it's going to look like in the real world. But this is a Schwa na, which means a moving Schwa or mobile Schwa. This is a Schwa nach, because it's not hard enough that they look the same, but one is Schwa na and one is Schwa nach. And if you can't hear the difference between those two, well, even if we weren't on Zoom, you might not be able to hear the difference between the two. Mobile Schwa at the top, and the resting Schwa, or a really cool word, quiescent Schwa. You might see quiescent Schwa in some textbooks, not in ours. Ours is very user-friendly. It's not going to use a word like that. But the only time I had ever remembered seeing the word quiescent was ice pops, frozen ice pops. If you look at a frozen ice pop and you look at the ingredients, it will tell you that it's quiescently frozen. And since quiescent means resting, I'm like, what are they sitting resting, and you sneak up on it and you freeze it when it's not looking? Like, I don't understand. I have to look up what the difference between that kind of quiescent and this kind of quiescent is. You're staying very quiet. It's quiet. Anyway, so the Schwa na is the one that makes a sound. A moving Schwa makes a sound, but it is not enough of a sound to be counted as a vowel, according to the way I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you two different ways of looking at the Schwa. One is that it is the absence of vowel sound. It's not big enough to be a vowel. And the other is, for those of you who just don't want to believe me about this and you're stuck with how you think of vowels and syllables, I'll give you another way of looking at it if we need to. But for now, the moving Schwa, the Schwa na, sounds like that's it, just the resting Schwa is totally silent. So moving is and resting is silent. And you've already seen examples of these, so that's why I'm teaching all of this to you now. But today I get to tell you some of the other cool things about this. And that is, the moving Schwa will always come at the beginning of a word or a syllable. So the moving Schwa will always come at the beginning of a word or syllable, and the resting Schwa will always come at the end of a syllable, and what comes before it will always be a short vowel. What comes before a resting Schwa will always be, did you hear what I said? Always. It's not often that you get a rule that says always in Hebrew. What comes before a resting Schwa will always be a short vowel. How cool is that? So now you understand that there's a difference between long vowels and short vowels. And this is one of the most important things that you're going to need to know, is that what comes before a resting Schwa will always be a short vowel. That doesn't mean that what comes after a short vowel, every time you see a Schwa, is a resting Schwa. It's not always a resting Schwa, But if it is a resting schwa, I promise you that what comes before it will always be a short vowel. So how is that going to help? That seems mean that I just told you that. But take a word like, let's take this one, and I'm going to write it first with the consonants. And this is terrible. I hate doing this with my thing, but av, whoop, ra, ham. There's a word that we know, Avraham. So I'm going to tell you now that when we look at a Hebrew word and we want to know how to spell it correctly, we try to figure out how many syllables are in that word. And the way to know how many syllables are in the word are how many vowels are in the word. So Avraham, you know, is 3 syllables, right? Avraham. And so I want to know if it's long vowels or short vowels. And I'm going to tell you that how do I break a word down into syllables is after a long vowel, I break it. But I'm looking for a short vowel and a resting schwa, and that's another way to break it. So I'm going to make a little chart over here. And I'm going to give you new colors here. Let's see, we didn't do green yet. So I'm going to tell you that these are my syllable chart, that after a long vowel, that's a complete syllable. And I should have done that brown, shouldn't I? Or after a short vowel and a resting schwa, short vowel, resting schwa, that's a complete syllable. So that's what I'm going to look for here. And I'm going to see if we can predict what vowels are supposed to go there. And I'm going to tell you, this is a Rabbi Jana-ism, that at the end of a word, most of the time, if it's just a regular old word, if it's not possessed or anything, if it's a regular word, then most of the time it's a long vowel. If you hear a ah at the end of a word, it's going to be a long vowel. And that's true for this one. Avraham is going to be that. But here I have ra, ham. So if I have to guess what's going to come after that, I don't have a short, I don't have 2 consonants here. So what's going to come on under this one is going to be this, and I would be right, Avraham. And what's going to come here is I'm going to have av, and it's going to look like this, av, and that's a resting schwa. I can tell because there's no sound in it. You already know the word, Avraham. So I have 3 syllables, and I'm going to break it down into syllables by this. I don't think if I do a color like, I don't know if you're going to be able to see these, but I'm going to break it down 3 syllables. I have to account for 3 complete syllables. So this is 1 short vowel resting schwa, 2 long vowel, 3. Well, I have an interesting situation happening here, because so far I've seen that I have a short vowel resting schwa or a long vowel, and now I have something where I will break it after this vowel, but now I have a situation where I have to break it at the end because there's a consonant here. So I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to do my purple ones here. And I'm going to do this like this. I'm going to make this not just be a random thing. I'm going to make this an E. E stands for end of word. It's not a final. This happens to be a final consonant, the final mem. It doesn't have to be a final consonant. It just has to be whatever the end of the word is consonant. And I can have a long vowel and then the end of the word, and that will be a complete syllable. And I'm making them in this chart because I have a new chart for you. I have the difference between open syllables and closed syllables. An open syllable ends in a vowel sound. So all of these long vowel ones, ra, that ra is an open syllable. I end it with a vowel sound, ra. But these are closed syllables because I end in a consonant sound, av and ham. Those are closed syllables. So I'm going to do O for open, and I'm going to do closed here. Some of you may not be able to remember any of this stuff, and that's okay. But some of you are going to be so happy that I told you this because all the pieces are going to fit into place. And some of you are going to be glad that I recorded this because then you can go back and look at it again. So closed just means it ends in a consonant sound. And I now have 2 different kinds of ways of making a syllable end in a consonant sound. Either I have a short vowel and a resting schwa like av, or I have a long vowel, but it's the end of a word. So I'm not leaving my mem just dangling there. And I'm going to say my syllables are avraha. That doesn't work. So those are the 2 ways of doing that. And you'll notice I have 1 thing left over in my little block thing here. but I want to make sure everybody getting this a little bit, except if your brain is hurting. I don't want to ask if your brain is hurting, but if you have a specific question, if you need, I will go over this many, 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 many times, because as we're learning words, I will show you what's going on. But right now, I just want to make sure that we kind of have a clue. You need to know that there are long vowels and short vowels. You need to know that there's a moving kind of a schwa, which means the kind that come at the beginning of syllables. And you've got a resting kind of a schwa, which comes at the end of a syllable. And you'll need to know that if you have a resting schwa, then it's going to be in a closed syllable because you're going to end with a consonant. And if you have a long vowel, it's going to be an open vowel, an open syllable, because it's going to end with a my mouth is going to be open. And that sometimes I'm going to have a long vowel, but I'm going to let it be part of the end of the word. And that's going to be a syllable too. Because the core about spelling right now is how to make complete syllables. Okay. And the one thing that's missing requires us to know something about Dagesh. And I'm running out of whiteboard space here. But let's see what I can do about this. And I'm only going to be able to do some of this because of this running out of space. But the other example is, and I have to check to see if we have any vocabulary words that do this. I'm not sure that we have any vocabulary words that do this yet, because we didn't get very, very far. We do have a vocabulary word that does this. All right, so if I have more than one syllable in a word, like the word, and the word that I'm thinking now is this one. I don't know if you noticed that we had to do this. Oh, that's a lovely one. This word. I don't know if you know, whoop, I forgot to finish my shin there. Okay, so that's a shin. I don't know if you noticed these vowels, but I'm going to, oh, I don't know if you can see pink. We're going to try pink. Oh, yeah, we can see pink. So that's a 1 dot. Let's undo that because I didn't need to wiggle so much. We have E, Sha, all right? Except that that's not all that we need. And I'll show you why in a second. So how many vowels are in this word? I have 2 vowels, right? And that means I have to account for 2 complete syllables. But this is a short vowel. The E is a short vowel. And after a short vowel, the green is what I'm looking for up here. I'm looking for a resting schwa, and I do not have a resting schwa. So if I have a short vowel with no resting schwa, then I put in a dagesh. It can go anywhere in that letter, as long, I mean, some typesetting machines will have different places for it, but I need a dagesh in there. Why? Because the dagesh doubles my consonant. This kind of dagesh will double my consonant. So I essentially in here have, I didn't mean to do that as a pink. Let me go back and do this again because I need you to see this, visualize with me. What's really happening here is I have the word Isha, la la la, oh, that's terrible, la la la, except that I have 2 shins here now. Sorry, this could be black. My shin dot. So what I have here is the is a long vowel. And I'm just going to let whatever is over here be part of it, Isha. But that this dagesh is hiding, I had to double the consonant. So if you ask me, how do I break the word down into syllables? I will have to tell you that it comes right between the 2 shins, like this. So I have 1 shin that has a resting schwa on it. And I have, so my first syllable is ish, and my second syllable is sha. So built into this top word, isha, is 2 shins, isha. And that's what that dagesh is for doubling. And that's what this next category is. The missing piece is if I have a short vowel, and I have any kind of vowel that's not a resting schwa, any kind of vowel, then I have to put a dagesh in this next letter. Short vowel, no resting schwa. I have to put a dagesh in that next consonant. And once you see that, you will understand a lot. Okay. Now, this whole sheet is going to get saved in the recording, just letting you know, and I'm happy to share that with you. So this is going to be more helpful just for reading and things when it'll help you to make you a more fluid reader, and I'll explain what I mean. I'm clearing everything, and I'm going to take you to some practical purposes with this. Everything gets cleared, and I'm going to do some words for you that's going to make some sense out of all of this. How about if I take a word like, what's a good word that we've had that's a regular kind of everything doesn't, yom. We could do yom. We could do yuck, because we already have exceptions. And actually, I may have to change what I just did on my chart. Let me change that chart for a second. Hold on. This chart, what constitutes a syllable? I may have to change that. Let me rewrite this. Hold on. If I have, I'm going to do it this way. If I have a long vowel, that's a complete syllable. If I have a short vowel, zhoop, and that's supposed to be an S, and a resting schwa, and it's a resting schwa, boop, then that's a closed syllable, and that's a complete syllable. That's a closed and that's an open. And if I have anything at the end of a word, even if it's a long vowel, that's a closed syllable. But the other option that I have here is this one, and that is, this is an unusual one. I have a short vowel in the most accented word in the word, the most accented syllable in the word, then it acts like a long vowel. An example of that is, I have told you this many times, that you can have the word, anytime you have two es together, remember the segol is called a segolet. So we get the word melech, bunk, bunk. So how many vowels are in that word? Two. Ignore this, that's not a vowel, that's absence of vowel sound. Two vowels, melech. I have to account for two complete syllables. I want to break it down here, but I know that that's a short vowel. And I can't break it after a short vowel, I have to break it after a long vowel. So what happens is melech, as I told you, if I have an if I have two es together, then I have to add the accents on the first one. And if the accent is on a short vowel, and it's the most accented syllable in the word, then I break the word into syllables here, and it's kosher. And even though this is a short vowel, even though it's a short vowel here, if it's the most accented syllable in the word, it acts like a long vowel. I break it, it's an open syllable. Lech, it doesn't matter. It could be either a short vowel or a long vowel over here, whatever vowel it is, it's at the end of a word. And so I'm putting it all together as one syllable. So I have meh and lech, and it's kosher. I'm also going to have the same thing for the word. It's another, the vocabulary they gave us is really a pain in the neck. Most of it doesn't fit the easy patterns, but it does fit regular patterns, but just not the easy patterns. The most normal things that we're looking for are a long vowel or a short vowel and a resting schwa. These two are not typically ordinary things, but you're going to see that they kind of are here. So I have a word like na'ar. and what's happening under na'ar. So there's two ways of doing this. One is, can you guess how to spell the word? And the other is, when you look at the word, can you figure out what's going on and how to break it down into syllables and all that jazz? And what we have here are, I don't remember what color we used for short vowel. Anybody remember? I think we were, whatever. So we have na'ar. Those are two short vowels, but this is the accented syllable. And so it acts like this again. And so I can break it between these two, and I have an open syllable, na'ar. I have accounted for two complete syllables. Okay, that's what's happening there. I've accounted for two complete, and I can do that with every single word we have learned so far. I can show you exactly how to break it down and be able to account for all of our syllables, complete syllables, all of our words as complete syllables. But wait, there's more. Because, so I'm going to erase this part here, because there's, in addition, I started to show you a rule about Dagesh. So the next thing that I have to talk to you about is to learn the spelling rules, is Dagesh rules. Dagesh acts in, I'm going to say, three ways. One is what I just showed you, that if I have, I'm going to go back to this. If I have a short vowel and not a resting schwa, if I have anything else, some kind of vowel or vowel marker, if I have anything else, then I have to put a Dagesh in here. Short vowel without a resting schwa, that's one of the kinds of Dagesh, and that's a consistent thing. Another kind of a Dagesh is if I have, I'm going to make this a different color just because it's fun to do different colors. Another kind of a Dagesh goes into, let's see how wiggly I can be for these. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, these 6 letters, Kaf, Fe, do they kind of look like these letters? And Tav, I think the Bet looks the least like a letter, Tav. In fact, I'm going to try to make that one better. I'm going to make that go away. We're going to try to draw this again. So if I make them Beged Kefet like this, that's better. So these 6 letters at the beginning of a word or syllable, the beginning of a word or syllable will take a Dagesh. 3 of them change their pronunciation in modern Hebrew. All of them used to change their pronunciation in Hebrew. So this one, if I put a Dagesh in it, it goes from a V to a B. This one, if I put a Dagesh in it, it goes from a Ch to a K. This one, if I put a Dagesh in it, it goes from a F to a P. And you'll notice that all of them have flowing sounds. They're called fricatives. They all go from a fricative to a plosive. So we have V to B, we have Ch to K, we have F to P. In other words, if I take the Dagesh out, it flows. If I put the Dagesh in, it's an attack sound. I like to think of it this way. There was this really cool PBS show I saw once upon a time, long time ago. They were talking about music. And you know how music, sound are just waves, and they go up and down over a thing, right? So they were showing that part of what tells you what kind of a musical instrument it is the attack part, just the beginning of this part. So they played an A, let's pretend this is A. They played an A note and they had a piano do it, bonk. And then they played A on a cello. Now, there's no way, you don't have to be a professional musician to know the difference between a cello, wah, and a piano, bonk. There's no way that you would miss the two. But they did some slicing on here, and they sliced off, they just took this part off altogether, So the A wave is going to be exactly like that. The top and the bottom are going to be equidistant from a line in the middle, let's say. That's an A wave. That's how big the A wave is. When they took off the attack sound, totally lost the difference between the two instruments. You could not tell them apart. They're both just, you couldn't tell them. And I think of these letters kind of like that, that when you want to start a sound, when you want to start a word, you start with an attack sound, like when you put your bow on the cello, or when you plunk on the piano. But when you're in the middle of the note, it just flows. And so these are, if you're at the beginning of a word or syllable, these three, you can hear the difference in sound. The other three used to change their sound, but they no longer do. But it used to be that without a dagesh, this was a j, and with a dagesh, it was a g. This one without a dagesh, this one was a v, and with a dagesh, it's a d. And this one, you already know that without a dagesh, it's either a s or a th. So it's either an S or a th, because you've seen places like Bethel or Bethlehem or Beth Shalom or something like that, or Bas Mitzvah or something where the Simchas Torah, where you've got a s sound, depending on what dialect you came from and what they preserved. But when you're writing it, or especially for biblical Hebrew, anytime it's written, every time it's written, you're going to see that at the beginning of a word or a syllable, it is going to take a dagesh. What we call the Beged Kefet letters. Beged Kefet will take a dagesh at the beginning of a word or syllable. Beged Kefet will take a dagesh at the beginning of a word or syllable. Okay. Or if I have a short vowel and no resting schwa, anything else, then I take a dagesh. I've doubled the consonant. Okay. Now that you know those rules, and those are always, if I have a short vowel and no resting schwa, I have to put a dagesh. Always at the beginning of a word or a syllable, I'm going to put a dagesh in these 6 letters, just those 6 letters. Okay. Now that you know the always rules, I'm going to tell you the never rules. And I'm going to tell you that the never rules always overrule the always rules, because I can say that. It took me many years of practice to be able to say that. The never rules always overrule the always rules. So I'm going to give you 3 never rules. And these supersede. These are more important. There's never a dagesh, even in this category up here. There's never a dagesh in these letters, and we've talked about them before. There's never a dagesh in alpha. Well, I'm going to remind you, if we say, because we know some of these words already, there's never a dagesh in the gutturals or resh. And the way I'm reminding you is that the words spell out, all the letters spell out ha'ach ra, which means the brother is bad. And even if you have a good brother, those are the 5 letters that never take a dagesh, ha'ach ra. And I'm going to change the color of this one to something else, and it doesn't matter what, just because I want to show you that is not a guttural. Aleph, Hey, Chet, and Ayin are the gutturals. Resh is not a guttural, but they get thrown into this category. But those 5 letters will never take a dagesh. Never, ever take a dagesh. The never rules always overrule the always rules. But what if it's the short vowel and then there's a no, blah, blah, blah? It doesn't matter. Never rules always overrule the always rules. So there will never be a dagesh in ha'achra. Those 5 letters will never take a dagesh. And you already know this, and I'll show you why in a second. But I also want to tell you that there's never a dagesh after, and this is the one, it's going to take a pinch more learning, but there's never a dagesh after, and I think we were doing this in another color, I don't know. Never a dagesh after a moving schwa. No dagesh. No dagesh after a moving schwa. Ever, 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 which mostly means these 6 letters. If your word started with a beged kefet letter, it can no longer start with a dagesh in it if you squish a moving schwa to the beginning of the word. Like if I have a preposition like but, in or with, and I put it at the beginning of a word, then I can't have a dagesh in that first letter of the word anymore. So never a dagesh after a moving schwa, never a dagesh after a long vowel, never a dagesh after a long vowel, no dagesh, ever, ever, ever. Never a dagesh after a moving schwa, never a dagesh after a long vowel, never a dagesh in the gutturals or resh. You can redefine long vowel and say never a dagesh after an open syllable if you want. Open syllable. Because that even includes those situations when sometimes I have a short vowel in the most accented syllable. So it's never a dagesh after an open syllable. That's the reality. Or you can remember it as never after a long vowel because the short vowel is acting like a long vowel in those cases, whatever your brain helps your brain better. So let me show you why that's helpful. You ready? We're going to clear all these for a second. Never a dagesh. Always. So dagesh, short vowel, no resting schwa. Put the dagesh and dagesh in the beged kefet. I'm going to show you how this works. So we have, for example, let's take a boring word like one of our first words is melech. And I don't remember if this was the prayer book Hebrew or the other one. We've already figured out how to break that into syllables. It's meh and lech, and the first syllable is meh, even though it's a short vowel, it's the accented syllable, so it acts like a long vowel, so we're good. So it's melech. I'm going to write two melechs here, just because I want to show you two different examples of something. That almost went too long. Two different melechs. And I want to show you two different examples of cases that you've already seen it working. So one of them is one of our favorite ones, because we've talked about this a bunch. What happens if I have ha? This is how you say the. You add that to the beginning of a word or syllable. Add that to the beginning of a word to say the. But look what we've just done. We've just added a short vowel to the beginning of a word. So whatever is underneath that mem, it cannot be a resting schwa because it was the beginning of a word. And by definition, a moving schwa comes at the beginning of a word or a syllable. It cannot be a resting schwa no matter what it is, even if it were a schwa. So I will always, well, that wasn't a very good one. I will always add a dagesh at the beginning of a word. I'm going to add ha with a dagesh. And you could say why, and I'm going to tell you, ta-da, always add a dagesh at the beginning of a word. Always. And you're going to say, wait, what did you tell me about always? Never rules, always overrule the always rules? Yep. And that's why it changes to other things. But let me show you the other thing first over here. What if I want to say, do you remember, did we learn this? I think we may have learned this in the other class. I don't remember which class we learned it, but this is a vocabulary word you're going to have to know for biblical Hebrew anyway. Min means from. But sometimes, instead of making it two separate words, we're going to prefix this by kind of contracting it. Actually, so there's another reason for a dagesh, but this is one. So I have a short vowel, and I'm popping that in. And the other reason for the dagesh is this, that sometimes I call it the tombstone dagesh. If I use it as like an apostrophe for a contraction, if it represents a fallen letter, so that nun has fallen away, this nun is gone. So I'm putting a dagesh. So either I could think of it as this is a short vowel and there's no resting schwa here, so I have to put a dagesh, or I can think of it as a tombstone dagesh because it's representing the fallen nun. Either way, I'm going to have a dagesh in there. So then the next thing I want to show you, and I know I have 3 minutes left and I probably should be letting the other class come in, but the next thing I want to show you is this. I'm going to clear all these things. I'm going to show you some rules. So if I add ha to the beginning of a word, whatever the word is, I'm always going to add a dagesh. Unless it starts with, the next word starts with an aleph, an ayin, or a resh. And then I'm going to start with this. And look how cool this is. Instead of starting with a short vowel and a resting and a dagesh, I'm going to start with a long vowel. Poof, problem solved. I don't have to worry about, I have a short vowel, I need to finish a syllable. It's an aleph, an ayin, and a resh. I cannot take a dagesh in those letters, so I compensate by making a long vowel before it. Poof, problem solved. But then what if I have, I'm going to do purple, you'll see why in a second. What if it starts with a hey or a chet? And then I have something really funky happen. Hey or a chet. I start with a ha, and I call these guys my little Pac-Man letters. They're actually Pac-Man ghosts, the way I'm drawing them. And they eat the dagesh. See what I did there? They just ate the dagesh. So a ha doesn't have any kind of compensation at all. At least with this ha, there's a compensation. With these ha's, there's no compensation. But they're happy like that. The hey and the chet don't care. I'm taking away my guys. I didn't mean to take away my chet part. So we got to go back to him and give him back his chet. So those two. And there's one more category, and I'm sorry that it's not written below. If I have a hey with a hey, with a kamatz, or a chet, so this is with the way the word starts, with a kamatz, or an ayin with a kamatz, then instead what you get is, we haven't done this one yet, heh. Only if this is the unaccented syllable, whatever else is in this word. So if the accent is someplace else in the word, so I have a word like chaver, which is a friend, a guy friend. Chaver means, if I want to say the friend, I have to say he chaver. If I have the word ir, which is city, and I want the plural, it turns into arim, and the accent's on the rim, then I have to say he arim. If I have harim, which are mountains, then I say he harim, because it's a ha with a kamatz under it. It's not the accented syllable, so I have to do a he. Those are the compensations, and those are why there are compensations there. And that is most of what you have to know about how to spell everything. And I am going to